a member of parliament wants to go to a certain village and say, I've built this primary school. This administrative block, I'm the one who has put it up. Then now they say, you see, I'm development conscious. A member of parliament is not elected to build primary schools or to open up roads or to sink balls. That's not the work of, or pave roads, not the work of member of parliament. Those are things that needs to be done if you are applying fidelity to the constitution. Those are things that needs to be done by county governments. Everybody wants to create a kitty for themselves. Everybody believes they are going to get money out of this thing. It is not done for the benefit of Kenyans. Don't pursue political expediency at the expense of service to the people. If the members of parliament refuse to pass those bills, we will cross that bridge when we get there.
Hello, very good day to you. Welcome to another episode of the Kanini Talk here on Herman Manyora's YouTube channel. Such a pleasure to have you on board on yet another episode of Kenya's most comprehensive political and public governance analysis show. My name is Evans Okinyi. Well, welcome. This fine morning again, I'm with Wakili Willis Otieno. We want to look at a number of issues that are actually taking place in the country and that will actually affect the kind of governance that we witness here. Okili, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, the National Dialogue Committee had some recommendations, and therein we had the so-called entrenchment into the constitution of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. Therein, we also have National Government Affirmative Funding, so-called NGAF. All these types of funds were declared unconstitutional by the court. Now, here we are. There is also a bill that has been tabled in Parliament to that regard to make sure that these funds are entrenched into the Constitution so that they can actually become operational. Now, let's get it here. What do you make of the court's decision to declare these funds unconstitutional?
Of course, those funds will remain unconstitutional to the extent that the Kenyan people, when they passed the 2010 Constitution, yes, they had identified the manner in which they are going to be devolving services and funds, and they set up the structure of devolution, being the county governments.
Yes.
Remember that CDF and the NGAF funds had been set up before the Constitution had been enacted, and we didn't have devolved units as a basis of devolving funds from the central government to the local regions. But MPs are being selfish in demanding that they also need to have a role to play in spurring development, so to speak, at the local level. So they want to hold on to their dear funds, because to them they're using them as a basis for political campaigns and to endear themselves to the people. The courts, in my view, have rightfully held that any devolution of funds or services should be done within the framework of the county governments. So a member of parliament's role is limited to legislation, oversight, and representation. Where does a member of parliament find the mandate to now become a fund administrator? Because when you become a fund administrator, at that point now you mutate from being an oversight person to become an executive implementer. So where do you get the oversight of that member of parliament who is managing this fund? So that is problematic. And politically, Kenya Kwanza wishes to appease members of parliament by giving them a fund. MPs in Kenya have now understood their role to be that they need to be providing bursaries, they need to be opening up village roads, they need to be kitting health facilities. That is not the role of a member of parliament. And your development record should not be measured based on the number of roads you opened up in your village or the number of bursaries you've opened up in your constituency. If there be any fund that needs to be sent to the local units, we have a structure of devolution which is county governments, and those funds should find their way, even if it is bursary fund, be it money that you want to spend to open up roads. It should be done through the framework of devolution. Take it to the county governments, let the people access the services and the funds through that framework of devolution, not through members of parliament. Because then it begs the question, who oversights parliament on how they are implementing CDF funds in their localities. There's nobody who's oversighting them. The reports go back to the same members of parliament, and that is problematic. We need to bite the bull, hold the bull by its own, and tell members of parliament, you have no role in funds administration at the constituency level. If whatever you are doing is a good thing, which I'm saying from some members of parliament have done exemplary work with CDF, but it was in my view out of lack of structures. Now that we have structures of devolution, let all those funds go through the devolved units. Let it be done within the administrative frameworks of county governments to disburse those funds. Members of parliament should limit their functions to legislation, representation, and oversight as an assembly or a senate, not to start having their own kitties that they are running parallel activities to county governments.
Where do you think the problem emanates from? Is it that our members of parliament do not understand their role, or they just choose to ignore?
Of course, they choose to ignore it. Political expediency. A member of parliament wants to go to a certain village and say, I've built this primary school. This administrative block, I'm the one who has put it up. Then now they say, you see, I'm development conscious. A member of parliament is not elected to build primary schools or to open up roads or to sink balls. That's not the work of, or pave roads, not the work of member of parliament. Those are things that needs to be done if you are applying fidelity to the constitution. Those are things that needs to be done by county governments and the national government. Those are what we call executive functions. Members of parliament should be oversighting them when they are doing those work. But in this particular instance, MPs want a poster to their name assigned to any little classroom that is coming up in their constituency, or any paved road that is being done in their constituency, or any borehole that is being sunk in their constituency. Then unless we need to go back as Kenyans and say, let us now restructure our devolved units. Let us also have constituencies as an organ of devolution, and then assign members of parliament over and above the three responsibilities, the duty to administer certain funds for constituency development. But it is largely, to my view, these are political ploy. A political ploy to appease members of parliament, to give them a kitty that they can use to campaign, to endear themselves to their voters. But be that as it may, realities at some point catches up with you. Up to now, members of parliament have not received the CDF. They've been told they'll receive it next year, in January. I assure you, they will not receive the full fund disbursement by the end of January next year. Because what this is going to show is this. We're having a debt problem. There's a problem with the revenue that government has collected. 70% is going to debt payment. Government is left with 30%. Now they must look for money to meet their obligations, and then you impose another obligation on them, look for money to give members of parliament for CDF. That is why until today, CDF has not been disbursed. They can't be a priority. And they were told they'll be given that money next year in January. I assure you, they will not get that money in January. Maybe later towards March, and they don't even get all of it.
I want you to make these as simple as possible to our viewers here so that they understand. Now, one, on what basis did the court declare this fund unconstitutional? And then, why the sudden change from CDF to National Government Constituency Development Fund? Why that additional of the one national government?
Because the court said, the courts found that Kenyans have set up devolved units as the organs of devolution. Now MPs, to try to cure that finding, they are now trying to align themselves to national government. So they are saying these are funds that will be disbursed by the national government to do national government development at the constituency level. Then they are going to superimpose themselves as patron of the fund. Because the court also did find that a member of parliament's role is purely legislation, representation, and oversight. They cannot become chairman of those funds, or they cannot be the implementers of the CDF fund. So they are treating it as if it is the national government that is carrying out its development using the constituency levels. So it is not that the national government is devolving funds, the national government is doing development at every constituency using this set amount of funds.
Is it their own creation, or did the court direct so?
No, the court did not direct so. They're just trying to be legally clever by half, by coming up with this new terminology and anchoring it on a national government development plan. Then they're going to superimpose themselves as patrons or overseers of that fund.
Making it a national government development fund means that definitely those funds will be coming from the national government,
Yes.
the constituency down there.
Yes.
Does that now make it legal?
It doesn't make it legal, because then what is the role of the member of parliament? That is my main problem.
So it all comes back
Because it comes back to the role of member of parliament. Because national government, even today, the national government still does a lot of development activities and work in county government, I mean at the local level. And they are not using any structures of CDF to do it. So what members of parliament were simply trying to do is to say, for purposes of our constituencies, we want you to set aside a specific fund that we will find somewhere along the way, we'll also be part of. That you'll be disbursing, for example, I think they've been doing 130 million per constituency. 130 million shillings that is assigned to this particular constituency as a national government fund to do activities to be determined by a committee set up. That committee set up, it is us members of parliament who influence who becomes the members of that committee. So we will use it. So they're trying to hide under the cover of the national government. But it brings back the question I raised. If your role is oversight, and you oversight the national government, now you've also given yourself a fund within that national government. You've told national government, create a fund, bring it to my constituency. We will use it for the following purposes. And I'll be the one responsible for setting up the committee. Are you not seeing a disconnect? You've stopped being an overseer, you are now an implementer, even though you are trying to hide. So in my view, I call it being clever by half. But still, even that fund will not meet the test of the Constitution. That is why they have moved towards amending the Constitution to entrench it. Because even them, they know, as it is established, as it is structured, it is still unconstitutional. So they are hoping to give it a constitutional backing, so that nobody will ever go back to court to say this fund that is being implemented at the constituency level defeats the tenets of our constitution and needs to be declared unconstitutional and disbanded. That is a conversation they're trying to avoid. But they need to go to a referendum. Let the people of Kenya decide. If they want MPs to be given an additional role of implementing constituency-based funds, they'll decide so in a referendum.
Does that require really a referendum?
Of course, it's in my view, it requires, because if you look at the referendum issues, it alters the structure of devolution. So yes, it should go to a referendum. Yes. And because you are tinkering with the structure of devolution, you are creating at the local level another entity that will be in charge of a specific fund at the local level. So that one definitely tinkers with the structure of devolution. So we need to go for a referendum on that one, in my view.
Okay. The MPs on the defense are saying that the Constituency Development Fund of the national government, Constituency Development Fund, has done wonders down there. And they're saying that their people need these services on the ground. And the people's understanding of the role of an MP is actually different from what the Constitution stipulates. So how do we balance between what the people expect and the services that should be rendered to them vis-a-vis the ability of the members of parliament to work on their mandate, the constitutional mandate, as well as offer their services to the people?
I mean, let me not be, not to be misquoted. I'm very clear. CDF across the country has brought significant change. I will not be fair to Kenyans to say it has been totally a wasted opportunity. No. CDF has impacted people positively as a fund. My only issue is with the manner of administration. I'm simply saying you can still retain the CDF, anchor it in the devolved units, or take it to a referendum if MPs want to be associated with it. Let the people decide. But in my view, a member of parliament has no role in implementing projects. His work should be oversighting. So the people of Kenya should be given an opportunity in a referendum to decide. If they decide that we want to give them an additional role of being CDF administrators, they will have a say at it.
And then
if they find it as an expanded role of an MP, then they can do it. But then it will end up undermining, that's what I say, it will undermine their oversight function. But if the people say it in a referendum that we want it that way, so be it. But I can assure you, majority of Kenyans don't want members of parliament to play a role in development. It is only that members of parliament are using this thing as the basis, as the platform to market themselves and to endear themselves. Some of them are using the CDF fund to reward cronies, right? They are doing projects to favor their specific regions. So there is politics that influences how the fund is being administered. That is why for me, it is better this fund is delineated from members of parliament. It can even be run as a local community project that does that fund and implements it and oversees it. Member of parliament, focus on your role, legislation, representation, oversight. Become the watchman or the overseer of how the fund is being administered.
We've seen people arraigned in court, members of parliament have cases regarding the mismanagement of the specific fund. In as much as you've said that it has served its purpose, it has done its wonders. But then the question now comes, and actually this is what you're actually asking now, who will oversight the implementers of this? Because now these are the MPs are supposed to be doing this as currently put, but then the funds sometimes do not end up on the right projects that they're supposed to be doing. So how then do we get it right as a people to ensure that we don't see a situation whereby members of parliament are again arraigned in court for bungling millions of shillings that are meant to serve the people?
Of course, that's why I say remove members of parliament from this thing. Okay. Use the devolved units. You can say additionally for every constituency, the national government will be setting up, disbursing 130 million Kenya shillings per constituency, per county, to be used for the following projects. Okay. And that will be the constituency-based funds. Members of parliament will have no role in that fund. Let between the county and the people at the local level decide how to set up the administrative units of that fund. Remove members of parliament. Okay. Because members of parliament, in my view, most of them have abused the fund to achieve political objectives, not to achieve what we call the development objectives for which the fund was established. So we must bite the bullet and say, if you are a member of parliament, make a choice at election time. You want to be a member of parliament, your role is specified and limited to the following three. Okay. You want to become an executive, go and run for governor or seek a national executive seat and be an executive. So people should know their lanes and they should stick to their lanes. This thing of one person is running on lane A, lane 1, somewhere along the way you find him in lane 6 without understanding why he moved from lane 1 to lane 6. You now stop being an overseer, you are now an implementer of projects. And then this project implementation is fraught with corruption. Now you are being taken to court. So you see the Kenyan people are the ones who end up losing when we look at the totality of that particular fund. We are not getting the total value that we ought to have gotten from CDF, in my view.
So it can work, but within the devolved units.
Yes.
Then what then do you make of the other fund? We talk of the Ward Development Fund. Of course, that has also been proposed there. That should be given to the members of county assemblies. What is the difference between the legality of that particular fund and the CDF?
The same principle applies. You see, politicians, all of them now are trying to create funds for themselves. Even the Ward Development Fund, in my view, is an anomaly. Need not be there. Okay. You can still do a ward-based development program without assigning MCAs a fund. A county governor or a county government can set aside specific ward-based funds that they will implement in every ward in their counties. And the MCA has no role playing an administrative role in that fund. The MCA should retain an oversight role, responsibility over the project, over the county government, on how the funding has been done, how the project has been implemented, and if there be any queries, they should be writing reports and making appropriate recommendations. But when you assign them a fund and they use it to achieve political objectives, they don't use it for personal development. You are creating, in my view, a very ugly elephant where we don't know the head of the tail of that particular elephant. So elected leaders in representative bodies should confine themselves to their responsibilities. Representation, oversight, and legislation. The ones elected on the executive end should be left to do the executive functions of government, and with oversight from the representative organs, that unit.
Okay. What of the NGAF, of course, the national government?
Same principle.
And then senators are actually talking about...
Also as if an oversight fund. That's what I'm telling you. Politicians are all creating kitties for themselves. Everybody wants to create a kitty for themselves. Everybody believes they are going to get money out of this thing. It is not done for the benefit of Kenyans. So we must reject all these funds. But Senator, that's what I'm saying. Let it go to the people in a referendum. Let the people decide in a referendum if they want to change the roles. If they don't want to change the roles, stick to what the people gave you. Because in the last referendum, the people didn't give senators oversight fund. They didn't give members of parliament a CDF. They didn't give MCAs ward development funds. So do what the people gave you. But if you feel that you need to have an expanded role, then do a referendum bill. Take it to the people in a referendum to expand your roles and let the people decide. If they decide that over and above the 3, we are giving you an additional responsibility to oversee a fund, put it there, they will give it to you. And if the people say, let them play it, then I will have no problem with it. Because what these people are trying to do is to undermine the constitution. Because when we made the constitution, we didn't assign these funds and these responsibilities to those in the assemblies. Now they are trying to sneak them using legislation so that they can be able to control some funds. We must reject that. Anybody desirous of tinkering with this should take it back to the people and let the people decide.
Kenyans are expecting you and Honorable Jimmy Wanjigi on the ballot in 2027.
Yes.
Will it be part of your manifesto that these funds should be done away with?
We will adhere to the Constitution, fidelity to the Constitution. Anybody who desires to have a fund, let it go to the people in a referendum. If the people say yes, we will implement it. If the people say no, we will apply the Constitution to the letter as it is today. There is no place for Senate Oversight Fund, there is no place for MCS Development Fund, and there is no place for Members of Parliament CDF Fund in the Constitution as it is today.
How will you have your bills passed in Parliament when the Members of Parliament are the ones?
They are for every... Listen, you see, don't pursue political expediency at the expense of service to the people. If the Members of Parliament refuse to pass those bills, we will cross that bridge when we get there. We have ways in which you can always achieve some of them. And of course, Members of Parliament are reasonable people. I don't think that they will be so unreasonable that they'll say we'll never pass a bill because there's no fund. You can tell them, take it to the people in a referendum.
We had them refuse to get to Parliament the other day.
Because as it is now, it exists. It exists within the framework. So yes, it's due to them. So as it is now, it exists, and they are owed that money. Kenya Kwanza has a responsibility to send that money to them. It's even late, because the laws that they have allow for it.
Send a fund that is illegal to them.
Send it to them because the law allows it. Because you created it. It's the executive that created it. So send it to them. You owe it to them. But as if you don't allow that law to be in place,
the law does not allow it, so why send it to them?
No. They passed what they were calling the National Government, National Government Consumer Development Fund Act. They passed that law. The executive assented to it. So they committed to do it.
Okay.
That law is still being challenged in court. Right? So as it is as of now, the law exists and Members of Parliament are entitled to the fund.
So the money
because they passed that law and the executive assented to it. But if the courts were to declare that act unconstitutional, they will not be entitled to it.
Okay.
If you're in administration, we'll never give them. Yes.
And you're saying for your case in Jimmy, fidelity to the Constitution is paramount.
That is the most important thing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to stop this conversation at this particular moment. We're still here and we're wishing you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Kindly weigh in on this conversation and tell us what you think about the entrenchment of these funds into the Constitution. Do you think that they've actually served their purpose? Or is it that they're being used by our political class to hoodwink us so that at the end of the day, these funds do not serve the purpose for which they are meant to. Now, that was a conversation here with Wakili Willis Otieno. Allow me stop again at this point. Till we have this conversation again, have yourself a lovely day. My name is Evans Okinyi.